listening to Group Three's podcast, and today we'll be talking about one of Edgar Allan Poe's most disturbing short story titled The Black Cat. But what if we told you that how you experience this story might depend more on who you are as a reader than what Poe actually wrote? Actually, there is a story about this called reader response theory. So that's why our topic for today is The Black Cat and its reader, how personal bias shapes interpretation of Poe's dark tale. Hi again, my name is Natasha. Well, before I jump into my part, here's a quick refresher just in case it's been a while since you last read The Black Cat. The Black Cat tells the story about a man who starts off as gentle and kind, especially to animals. He has a black cat named Pluto that he really loves, but over time, he changes. He becomes angry, drinks a lot, and starts hurting the ones around him, including Pluto. And one day, he loses control and kills the cat. Later, another black cat shows up, looking a lot like Pluto. The man feels haunted and his guilt grows worse. Things get darker when he kills his wife and hides her body behind a wall. In the end, the second cat leads the police to the hidden body by letting out a loud scream from inside a wall. It's pretty dark, right? Well, it's depending on who is reading the story, the meaning can shift. And to explore that, I look at the article titled 21st Century Readings of Gothic Elements in Some E.A. Poe's Works. And this article gave me a lot of insight into how readers today interpret the psychological and emotional layers of Poe's writing. So I use it to support my breakdown of three readers' perspective: animal lovers, psychology-oriented readers, and also dark humor enthusiasts. Let's start with Animal Lover. So for this reader, The Black Cat felt like a betrayal in the most personal way. Imagine reading about someone who loves animals so much and then suddenly turning cruel to the creators that they love. Well, animal lovers will probably stop following the story when the narrator hurts Pluto. Well, Pluto is the name of the narrator's cats. So they don't care why, just that the narrator did it. Then we have psychology-focused reader. They might take a step back and say, okay, this guy isn't just violent, he's unraveling. They start asking what's going on in his mind. Why does he keep shifting the blame? And why is he so calm while narrating everything? In the article that I mentioned, the narrator's descent into madness is connected to perverseness and estrangement. It's kind of psychological disconnection from humanity and from himself. And for this type of reader, the cat isn't the focus, but the narrator is. Then the last one, now this one might sound strange at first, but some readers actually find parts of this story funny. Not funny in a haha way, but more like ironic and absurd. Think about it. The narrator kills his wife and hides her body behind the wall, and then thinking he's so clever, taps the wall while taking to the police, only for a cat to meow from behind it and expose everything. It's so dramatic that it almost feels like a cosmic joke. Some readers, especially those who enjoy dark or twisted humor, might read that ending and think that, wow, he's really dug his own grave. And the article I read actually support that kind of reading. It described the cat's final scream as both horrifying and triumphant, as if the cat wanted to reveal the truth. So yeah, that's three readers. One sees cruelty, one views it through a psychological lens, and one finds dark humor in all the madness. Alright, I'll stop here before I start sounding like the narrator myself. Now, let's hear what Tevinaa has to say next.
Well, thanks, Natasha. And after hearing your part, and she said about psychology-focused reader, and I'm one of them, because when I read The Black Cat, I thought that this guy might not just be evil. He might actually be really messed up in the head, and so I kind of agree with you. And anyway, well, everyone, my name is Tevinaa, and I found this journal article to back up my opinion and to really understand about the psychological aspect in The Black Cat. And this journal article titled Anxiety and Defense Mechanism of the Main Character in The Black Cat. Well, it basically takes the whole story and looks at it through the psychological lens, like what is going on in the narrator's mind while he's doing all this crazy stuff. And I think that turns out this guy just not randomly violent, and he's dealing with a lot of internal anxiety. And the article talks about three kinds, which are neurotic, realistic, and moral anxiety. And so the first one is neurotic anxiety, is when you are scared of something that is not even dangerous. And you can totally see that when he says,
I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. Its evident fondness for myself rather disgusted and annoyed me.
like, with the cat literally loves him and he just starts to hating it. That's not normal. And then there's this realistic anxiety which is a fear of something real, like when this cat scratches him and he just completely loses it. He says,
The fear of the demon in Spandi possessed me. I knew myself no longer.
it's just dramatic, and he literally says that he didn't feel like himself anymore. And that kind of emotional snap, I don't think it's not just, oops, I was angry. It's more like a breakdown. It's more something that building up inside him and then breaking up at one point. And then the last one is moral anxiety, and this is the guilt part. After he blinds the cat, he says,
Gosh, I burned, I shudder. Well, handed pineapple atrocity.
so yeah, he knows what he did was wrong, but does it stop? No. And so this troubling act must be coming with something like defense mechanism. And in this article, it is also mentioned that drinking to forget, which is an act of displacement, and pretending that he's not guilty is denial, and blaming the cat for everything is just straight up rejection. As he literally says that,
Hideous beast whose craft has seduced me to murder.
like, really, the cat makes you really do it. So yeah, when I read all of that, I started thinking that this guy is really spiraling, and he might not just be a villain, he's deeply disturbing. And to mention that at that time, mental health problem is not something that we can talk freely, and people back then don't know how to handle it properly. And if someone's into psychology or has dealt with anxiety themselves, they might say that, okay, this guy needs help. But if someone's more focused on the actions over mindset, they might say, sorry, mental health or not, you killed your wife, no excuses. And that's why I love that this story gives space for both of those readings. I like how you read it says something about you. Anyway, that's my take. Let's keep it going.
Okay, thanks Tevinaa and Natasya for your perspective on the story, The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. Well, we cannot deny that animal cruelty and animal abuse is the main topic that we have in here, right? And it's quite a sensitive topic, isn't it? There's a lot to discuss about animal cruelty, and same with the article that Marshyanda, review in here, Animal Cruelty and Intimate Partner Homicide in Edgar Allan Poe is the Black Cat, that actually talked about how animals have a role in homicide and what is the feminist perspective thinks of the story. So, do you know that there's this link connection between cruelty to animals and violence against humans? And it's not just a fiction, because it's been studied by criminologists, by psychologists, and also scholars. Well, animal cruelty is one of the things how abusers start their violence behavior, and this will lead to more vulnerable human victims. Let's take the real-life example of Albert DeSalvo, or renowned as the Boston Strangler, that actually confessed he is torturing and killing cats before he murdered humans. Ooh. And same with the story here, the narrator's violent actions are initially aimed at his pet, Pluto, and then escalated from animal cruelty to murder of his wife, and this highlights a dark psychological pattern that we talked about before. So what is actually drives this violence behavior? Well, Lichtman in 1989 said that there are three primary psychological elements contributing to motivation for murder. The first one is frustration, then there is fear, and the last one is depression. And this is all shown in the story, like how the narrator experiences fear, especially after the fire, saying, "My terror was extreme. For months, I could not rid myself of the phantasm of the cat." And now let's switch the perspective. Serial killers and abusers often target animals, particularly cats, because they serve as projections of their frustration with women. This can be seen in the story how the narrator at first mentioned how he and his wife were initially happy with his wife sharing her love for animals, but however, as the story progresses, his frustration becomes more evident as his behavior becomes more violent. This frustration is proven on the line. My wife has caught my attention more than once to the character of the mark of white hair of which I had spoken, and which constituted the sole visible between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. And then he murdered his wife with an axe. This murder also a form as of release, because once dead, the wife delivers his husband to an awful freedom, and even the husband or the narrator refers to this murder as an act of accomplishment. He said, "This hideous murder accomplished, I set myself forthwith and with entire deliberation to the task of concealing the body." And there is no sense of guilt in here, right? And instead, he slept peacefully, saying, "I soundly and tranquilly slept. I slept even with the burden of murder upon my soul." Anyway, his cruelty is not just about frustration. It's about asserting dominance, especially over his wife. For the narrator, killing his wife gives him a sense of power and control, giving him the feeling that he was somebody. And this also may explain why he is not divorcing his wife, but rather killing her, since divorce did not give him the satisfaction of his need to exact revenge. And with this, the black cat remains a powerful reminder of the psychological patterns that can lead to violence. It challenges us to recognize the early signs of abuse before they escalate into something more cruel. And that is all for me. Let's go to the next person.
Wow, thank you everyone. That was insightful and impressive perspective for me. After hearing your talks, as a reader of this story, I was able to reflect on what I read in the journal Otherness in the world of Gothic fiction, the symbolic potential of Edgar Allan Poe, the Black Cat. Before I begin, hi, my name is Selvia. After reading this journal, I have my own perspective that I highlight based on this journal about psychological horror and the Gothic elements. I realized that the truly scary part of this story isn't the ghost or even the cat, but it is the mind itself. The story invites readers to reflect not only on what happens in the plot, but also it makes us feel about human nature. I think it is a part of psychological horror that the narrator has. The journal explained that the black cat in the story isn't just a scary creature, but a symbol of the narrator's dark side. So, when we read the story, we're not just watching the narrator as a criminal, but also as someone deeply trapped in his own inner conflict. However, the deeper we dive into the story, the more we realize that the real horror comes from within the human psyche, as I said before. It forces us to ask, do we really know who we are? Actually, that question can be more frightening than any ghost for me. The journal also shows how Poe skillfully used Gothic elements that make us feel trapped and uneasy, just like the narrator. Oh yeah, if you are not familiar with Gothic elements, I will explain a little about this. So, Gothic elements in literature and art usually include a combination of dark and often featuring supernatural occurrence. These elements are used to create atmosphere of mystery, fear, and sometimes explore themes of death, madness, and the supernatural. Okay, back to the discussion. One of the most powerful parts is how the cat seems to come back after being killed. It's almost like a ghost, as a reminder that the sins of the past cannot simply be buried. The reader can interpret the cat's return in many ways. The story brings us to the chilling realization that the narrator's greatest enemy is actually his own conscience. The journal helps us to understand our reactions that make this Gothic fiction so powerful. In my opinion, Poe isn't just trying to scare us with creepy cats and murder scenes, but he's challenging us to face uncomfortable questions about who we are when no one is looking. Maybe that is all of my opinion. Thank you so much.
And yeah, that's wrap for today's. And thank you so much for sticking with us as we discuss about the Black Cat. And we can say that it's not just some creepy old story with a cat and wild narrator. It's actually kind of a mirror. When you see it it really depends on you, your thoughts, your feelings, even your past experiences. Some people might get stuck on the violence or the focus on the narrative psychology or look at the codec vibes and the deeper symbols. And that's what makes this story so interesting. There's no single right way to read it, and that brings us to the big takeaway, which is how you interpret the Black Cat says just as much about you as it does about the story. And that's actually what reader response theory is all about. It's the idea that stories are not just sitting there with one meaning. They come alive when you read them. Your background, your emotion, and your belief all shape how you experience the text. So next time when you read a story, it makes you feel something, whether it's shocked, confused, or even annoyed, pause and ask yourself, why did I react this way? And that's where the deeper understanding begins. Anyway, that's it from Group T, and we had great time talking about the Black Cat, and we hope you enjoy it too. Until next time, catch you later. Bye.